Okay, I'm really honored, and I feel it's a privilege to be here today with Wata Revital Orieli, who lived 25 years with Native American people in the United States, also Canada, or just U.S.?
I didn't live with them. I've been part of their circle and study with them.
Oh, okay.
I still am, but let's say for the time I was in the States, about 25 years, and lived on the reservation with two elders for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Wata, you've had such an amazing life and such an unusual life for an Israeli, for most people who are, were born and raised in the modern world. I mean, you've been very privileged to dive so deeply into a sacred world, and you bring that out here in your teachings here in Israel. This wisdom that you've learned, and it's a very sacred job that you have. And I would love to share a little of the sacred wisdom that you have become in your life, and that you share with people. So first of all, I'd love to begin at childhood. And I know you said that when you were a girl, sometimes they called you Indian, and I find that so amazing. You look completely Indian to me, and I've known some Native Americans. When you were living with the Native Americans, did they consider you a white person, or did they assume that you were Indian?
It depends. If they just saw me, they thought I was native. They started to talk to me in native tongue.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So sometimes they considered me as European descent, if they knew who I was, and because I didn't just walk on the street, they knew I was living on the reservation. And sometimes I got discounts because I'm not American. So
discounts because you're not American?
Yeah, because there is prejudice on the res.
A prejudice against Americans too.
Yeah.
Of course, how could there not be with a history? Like a dance like the whites and the Native Americans have danced. How could there not be anger on the side of the Native Americans?
Mm-hmm. I remember one incident when I went to fill up gas on the reservation, and my elder was in the car. And the girl was very, very nasty to me. And for every act of hers, with every negative gesture, I replied with a smile. And
nice.
And just softness and a smile. And I was very consistent. Because I also understood that she had a good reason why she was projecting on me her pain and the pain of the generation that came before her. And so that's the way I responded. And I came back to the car, and my elder said, "Wata," she said, "I'm very proud of you." And I didn't even think that she paid attention, but the Native people, Native philosophy is taught by listening and making observation mostly. So how could I even think that she didn't pay attention? That was my little ignorant moment.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. So Wata, aside from the amazing karmic hint of people calling you Indian as a small girl, what other clues were there that this would be your destiny? That was my biggest dream in Purim, which is like our Halloween. I always wanted to dress up as Native American. Wow.
And my parents always, when we grew up, nobody had a lot of money. I mean, commodities and things to own were scarce, not like today. So, of course, every Halloween I was getting the neighbor outfit from 3 years ago. Until one day I was lucky enough and the neighbor had a Native American outfit.
Wow, and that's, of course, another karmic clue. I mean,
and that was the happiest day of my life.
Wow, wow. Tell me about when you were 4 years old, and your mother, who was a kindergarten teacher, led a certain dance with the little kids, and you were one of them.
Yeah. So that's a classic story. I was also interviewed in primetime Israeli TV, and I told that story because it was such a turning point in my life. So it was winter time, and the song was calling in the cloud people. The cloud people and the rains to come and water the earth and have everything flourish and grow and blossom. And we were dancing, and the dance was a little bit like when you see Native American movies and you see the way they dance. It reminded me it was in a circle and people moving down a little bit, very close to the earth, almost parallel to the earth with their back.
Not people, little children.
We were little children.
4 years old you were,
exactly,
correct? All right.
Exactly. So, so we were singing that, and all of a sudden I felt that nature was so whole and complete and pure, and I wanted to be part of that wholeness, integral part of this wholeness, and I felt separated, and my heart was just tearing apart, and I stopped and I just started to cry like you wouldn't believe.
My goodness.
And my mom was shocked, and she said, okay, she said, what happened? What's wrong with you? So what a 4-year-old can say, my heart is tearing apart, nature is whole, and I'm separated. I didn't have the words for any of it. I felt it, but I couldn't speak it out.
Of course not.
And so then it happened like that 3 times. It happened every time we danced that dance. And then all the children came and poor me, and they want to give me little gifts, you know, they wanted to comfort me.
Wow.
But anyway, 4 times my mom said, you sit here, we'll dance. And I didn't cry that time because I think because the body was not moving and because it was not parallel to the earth, and I was able to hold back. So anyway, this is one station in that story.
Well, continue then.
And then, since that age, I had this thing constantly hovering kind of here. I called it the craving.
Okay.
And the craving, that craving of wanting to be one with nature never left me. And I remember that when I was in the end of elementary school or the beginning of high school, we read a very famous poem. It's called Our Little Brother. And that little brother, it talked about how our little brother was different than other children, and he always went to the forest to find peace. And it says that one day the boy became part of the forest, and people in the village asked, where did our little brother disappear? And still you don't know if he died and became part of the forest in his death, or he became part of the forest, therefore he became something else. And so when I read that poem, I said, wow, I'm not insane. I mean, there is at least another person in the world that is discussing those topics.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, like, when I was in the military, we were for 2 weeks in Jerusalem for a special training, and Jerusalem always kind of used to hit me with this, with this craving. When I came, I hated to come to Jerusalem because it will magnify this craving. I couldn't handle
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then when I moved to New York, it came down because I was buried in cement and things were just fine.
Okay.
So.
And you mentioned the book about Montezuma's daughter.
Oh yes, that's true. Yeah, that was another thing that was the clue about that Native American karma, is that it told a story of the Aztec people and how they were invaded by the Spanish
Yes.
people. And I also, there is some flavor to this book that I kept on reading it through the years, even when I was an older human being. Yeah.
So you always felt isolated, is that right? You felt
Yeah, I
different?
felt I was alone in the world. That even when I had friends and they loved me and loved them, and people were caring for me because I am part of a tribal society and everybody raised me, you know. The people in the neighborhood were watching me and caring for me. And all of that, I felt alone because inside there is something that wanted to connect and I couldn't connect.
Okay. So your family at a certain point went to live in New York City, is that right?
I went to live in New York City.
Okay,
They stayed here.
Okay, you went to live in New York City, and at a certain point you decided to to explore Native American spirituality, or how did that happen for you?
How it came. Yeah, and what happened is that in New York, I was introduced to spirituality through the 12-step programs.
Okay.
I had a significant other that had a drug addiction problem.
Okay.
And then I was exposed to that world.
Yes.
And I found myself in the 12 steps.
Okay.
And one day I was walking home with a friend from the program, and we lived in the same neighborhood. And, you know, ask her the typical New York question, what do you do, what do you do? And she told me she's a musician, and she writes music that is a combination of Native American music and Jewish music.
Ah.
And I just stopped, and I said, how did you get those two together? I mean, for me, it looked like a foreign concept. I couldn't grasp it. She was Jewish, by the way. And she said, look, those are very close traditions in their ideas and their way of life. And she said, I have an elder, grandmother Twylah Nitsch. She lives on a reservation. And once a year, she has this women council. People are coming from all over the states, from different places in the world. And she said, and I want you to come with me.
Oh, wow.
And I said, oh, yeah, well, all right. But she was very persistent. And
Thank
she
God.
dragged me.
Okay, thank God for persistent friends who don't give up on us.
So that's how I got there.
Tell me about the conference.
Yeah.
What it was that struck you
Mm-hmm.
that changed your life?
Yeah. First, when she started talking to me about Native American, I felt that I have an affinity to the people and their culture. But it's almost felt like that I've done a lot of incarnation as Native person, and maybe this chapter is closed already.
Okay.
But when I came to the reservation,
conference.
To the conference, yeah. Well, it was on the reservation, in my elder's house. Her elder that became later on my elder, twylah.
Okay.
And I sat in the council for 2 days, and I didn't understand what they were talking about. And And also, what looked strange to me, I said, every time that they take a bite from a cucumber, a drink from a water, there is a blessing and this and that.
Like the Jews.
Like the Jews,
Yeah.
but I didn't get it. After 2 days, I said, well, I actually think we do the same thing. And my grandparents were both religious, both sides. My grandfather was a cantor.
A singer in Seneca.
Yeah, he sang the prayers, and we had a lot of ceremonies growing up. And I remember very well his heritage.
Yeah.
So after 2 days, it's also dawned on me that we did the same thing.
Yes.
But anyway, the breakthrough for me was on the third day. Twylah walked into the teaching lodge with a little girl that was holding a jar, and then Twylah is talking to the audience, and she says, this little girl was here a year ago for Women Council, and she found a tadpole on a little paddle on the land, and she decided to take it home to Maine, which is far away, at least 10 hours ride. And when she arrived home, she did a little research, and she found out that it takes a long time until this tadpole turns into a frog. So she decided to bring it back this year and return it to its natural environment, natural habitat. But in order for it to go back to its natural environment, it needs a lot of energy, because during this year, this poor tadpole was around traffic jam, TVs, radios, stereos, children screaming, needs a lot of energy. And I'm sitting there and I said, I can't believe I'm hearing that. I said, 100 women, reasonable women, sending energy to a tadpole, and then click. I just, in that moment, everything, a door opened, and I got it. Because I would just say that the hand is a symbol. And it says one body, the hand is life, unity, equality for eternity. And it has that we as one body, one mind, one heart, one spirit through one law. And that is from the Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy, Five Nation Peace League. But anyway,
which goes back many
back.
Hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's actually, their name is the Haudenosaunee, and which the Seneca tribe, which my elder was Seneca, that was a Seneca reservation, is part of that confederacy. But
the famous Seneca from New York.
Yes.
Thank God they were allowed to go back to New York. They had been exiled.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, here is that 100 reasonable women sending energy to a tadpole. But what I understood in that moment is that because in the circle everybody is equal and everything is equal, that tadpole is as important as the President of the United States.
All has God. All has Creator.
All was created in the same hand. Therefore, we're all brothers and sisters to one another. We all come from the same source, and we're all related. So you'll hear often Native people say "Ahomu Chakriyasen," meaning to all my relationship, and that's what I understood in that moment, and embrace it as truth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I have a little continuation of the story, if you wish.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, you can title that part of the video "The Tadpole Story."
Okay.
In any way, a little after that, when I actually moved on the reservation with Grandma Twylah, one of the people who lived with us was a UFO contact. And,
in other words, she had been contacted by...
That was her mission in life.
Oh.
She was a bridge between us who live in this dimension on this earth to the UFOs.
Which is something historically well known well known by the Native Americans. They know that we're not alone in this universe.
Of course.
Yes.
And if you say it that way, Twylah did not use the word universe. She used the word uniworld, because she said there are many other worlds that we don't know about, and
Wow.
everything is included. So anyway, to stay with the tadpole, we had a group coming from Europe. They came from Germany, and they had a lot of questions. And they thought that they coming to a reservation, so they thought that we were going to welcome them with feathers and woo,
Yes,
and
yes.
and all of a sudden there was a house and a furnace, and
Yes.
people dressed up with jeans. And Twylah was very heavily into UFOs and things like that. We had a lot of events on the reservation has to do with UFOs. But anyway, that's why I told you I have a lot of stories.
I imagine.
But anyway, she brought this girl, her name was Yeo, to speak about the UFOs. So she talked about the UFOs, and then
Which
one
girl?
guy...
Not the tadpole girl.
No.
No, the UFO contactee.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
used to live with us. So one of the guys stood up and he says, "Excuse me, this is an Indian reservation. What is the connection between UFOs and what you're talking about? We didn't come here to hear about star people." And then Twylah, with her wisdom, she said, "Does anybody in the room has a way to address what he's asking?" And I stood up and I told the story about the tadpole. And that was it. There was no more doubts or questions. And
Oh yeah, I mean, I love I don't know if you've seen it. I love the TV program, Ancient Astronauts, and they go into Native American tradition and the Kachinas and the ancient petroglyphs of the star people, and the Native Americans know all about. I mean, as far back as they go back in their stories, they've always told the story about the star people, or the people who come from the sun. And so there's this Western idea that, well, for me, it's ridiculous. And now, for anybody who watches this program, I mean, it's so clear. There are so many huge monuments that even today we couldn't build. Seriously, we couldn't even come close to things like Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid. So, I mean, it's so obvious that we are not alone, and that we are connected to our star brothers and sisters. So, okay, so that's the tadpole story, and amazing. I'd like to get a little bit into how you connected with Mary Thunder and why, and how did you go from living at Grandma Twylah, or from being a disciple of Grandma Twylah, which was always, it never changed, I understand, to connecting with Grandma Thunder, and what was that about for you? Okay?
Okay. Twylah will give you a wet noodle for saying a disciple.
Okay.
Yeah, because she said there is no leaders and followers in this tradition.
How nice.
Yeah. I actually met Mary Thunder after I visited Twylah on that Women Council, but I haven't lived with Twylah yet. When I was working with Mary Thunder, what happened is that after I met Twylah, I realized that I wanted to find a teacher and dive as deep as I can. I'm a very focused person. I said I want to find one teacher and devote myself to learning the teachings. So I I looked for a teacher. I didn't think about living with Twylah because I'm a desert girl. You know, the prairies, the open prairie calls me. New York State with all the trees and the water, it was too green for me. I was craving the brown. So it didn't even occur to me to like try to live with her or something like that. But I hear about Mary Thunder, and I heard that she was doing vision quests. And
Mary Thunder was connected to the Lakota?
Yeah, her teachers were mainly Lakotas. Not just, I don't want to get the facts not properly, but I know that she was trained on particular ceremonies from the Lakota people.
The famous Lakota from the movie, for instance, Dancing with Wolves.
Yes.
What white people call the Sioux sometimes. Okay. In the Dakotas, very much, and not only. The Minnesota, Dakotas. Okay.
Okay, so I heard that she's coming to upstate New York to conduct vision quests. So I wanted to study with her. So basically, there is a protocol. So you first come and you see, you know, what she does and so forth. And I came to do a vision quest, and it was very scary for me. You know,
what is that?
A vision quest?
Yeah.
Okay. A vision quest is traditionally made when a child is getting into an age where they seek a vision. And there is a particular ceremony, traditionally, and I don't want to be an expert on native philosophy, so everything that I'm saying today, I heard it from particular people.
Okay.
So, and that was the way they passed the knowledge, but somebody from another nation might come and say, we do it differently.
Okay.
But the way I was told is that the young person is go on the mountain or sit in a visions pit in a hall for 4 days and 4 nights.
Whoa.
Seeking vision without food or water.
Whoa.
And there is a medicine person or somebody who is usually a medicine person that is in a distance that they communicate with, that is telepathically connected to that person and go through that rite of passage.
And watching out for them.
Yeah, watching out for them. And so in the end of the vision quest, the young person has a vision for their mission in life, and many times they'll have a name. They'll get a name.
Okay. What a powerful thing for a young person. Something like that, in my opinion, is so lacking for kids who grow up in the modern society without something like that. Anyway, yes.
So, because we are Westerners, not everybody is going on the mountain for 4 days and 4 nights without food and water right away.
Yes,
some teacher will do that, but the way Mary Thunder does it is every time that you sit, you add another day. Meaning, my first vision quest was to be for about 24 hours. A little bit more, a little bit less, but about 24 hours. So I came, and I was very scared because I'm a city girl, and just the woods scares the hell out of me. I was afraid of poodle. And any animals scared me.
Okay.
And all of a sudden there are forests there, and there are bears and wild animals. I mean, there are animals there that can also eat a person.
Well, a bear can eat a person, yeah.
Yeah, and wild cats and things like that.
Mountain lions.
Yeah, mountain lions.
Whoa,
so,
yeah.
I mean, pretty horrified, but I showed up.
Yeah.
And I came towards the evening time. We were eating dinner, and while we were eating dinner,
before you began, of course.
Yeah, and while eating dinner, a guy that just came down from the mountain, wrote a song about his vision quest. And I remember the song to this day. I heard it one time. It was
Okay,
like,
wow.
thunder and lightning, vision on the hill, spirit gonna na na na, it's always will, something
Wow.
like that. And so he was singing the song, and we're all enjoying very much. And dinner was over, and we were sitting outside. And all of a sudden, I saw Mary Thunder, and she's a big woman, and with a dress, and she was running like nobody's business. And after her, all her warriors are running after her, and she was saying, "If you want to sweat, come, run." And I didn't understand what she was saying, but basically, what happened is before you put a person on the mountain, they need to go into what they call the sweat lodge. Twylah doesn't like that term because she said it's not about sweating. But she will call it a purification lodge. My other elder will call it sacred stone lodge, and so forth. But anyway, she was indicating that if you want to go to the sweat lodge, you should run after her. So some people left. I didn't know what's going on. And then the next morning, I didn't go on the hill yet. The next morning we had breakfast, and I saw a new person sitting next to Thunder, and they tell the story of what happened the night before. And what happened is that from the time this person sang that song,
Yes.
she felt that something was off with somebody on the mountain. And you just need to know that sometimes there are like 30 people on the mountain, and she's with them telepathically. She knows what's going on with each person on the mountain.
Wait, so you had done that sweat lodge?
No, I didn't do it yet.
Oh, you didn't do it yet? Okay.
No, that was... I didn't follow her. I didn't run after her.
Okay.
Because I didn't know what's going on.
Okay.
It was clear to me that I'm new and I should stay out of it.
Okay.
But anyway, because it all happened also in like seconds, and so just to ask somebody what's going on. So anyway, the next morning she said something was off with somebody in the mountain, and by the end of the song she knew who it was.
Whoa.
And it was one of her warriors that's done that and been there for a long time, been with her for a long time. His name was Bear, and he was sitting on the mountain, and he started to kind of have negative thoughts. And he says, well, because when you sit on the vision quest, there is a circle around you, and you can't get out of the circle. You can't leave your circle.
Like a stone circle. Or whatever, sacred objects.
You actually do something called prayer ties.
Okay.
And you take tobacco and you put it in little bags, and you pray while you're doing it. And then you need to make many prayer ties, about 450. And so you have a huge string full of prayers, and that's how you mark your circle, and you sit there.
Okay.
And so he was sitting in his circle and started to have negative thoughts.
On the fourth day? Or
it was his
towards
third
the
day
end.
or fourth day. It
All
was towards the end. And he said, well, I can see the house from a distance. I can actually go there by myself. And he said in 5 minutes, there are people next to him bringing him down the mountain.
They had read his thoughts.
She did. She was connected
Not Mary
to him.
Thunder, but one of her associates. Is that right?
No.
It was Mary.
Yeah, she's responsible for the people on the hill.
Okay.
So she's connected to them telepathically, and if something wrong with somebody on the hill, she knows. And
Whoa.
she sent her warriors to bring him down.
Whoa.
So when he came down, he had to go through the sweat lodge. So what happened is that I saw them running to the sweat lodge while they were bringing this guy from the mountain. So anyway, he was getting sick. So the next day he went to the doctor and all that. But then was my turn to go on the mountain.
But you had been, that convinced you, didn't it?
Well,
that
I felt safe.
That she's the genuine article, and that she really
Yeah.
is linked in and watching over the people on the mountain.
Yeah, so when that happened, I said, this is a gift from the Great Mystery.
Yes.
You know, the twylah did not use the name God. She used the name Great Mystery because she said that energy cannot be defined. So when you give it a name, you define it. But
I
when
love
you
the
say,
name Great
yeah,
Mystery.
when you
Wow.
say Great Mystery, it's already communicate the essence of this energy, and you cannot ground it or lock it into a name.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, for me it was a gift from the Great Mystery because it was the mystery saying, look, you're safe here, okay? So when I went on the mountain, the person who brought me up, he put me on the mountain and he said, thank you for your service. And he left me there and I'm saying, my service? You guys are busting your butt while I'm sitting there looking at the trees. You're cutting woods, you're cooking, you're doing million tasks a day, and I'm the one in service. And then I understood that. I understood it fairly quickly because what happened is that, you know, in Judaism we have that concept, All Israel Arevim ze leze.
Yeah, we're all guarantors for each other.
Exactly. I call it we're all co-signers from
Yes.
one another. Because what happened is that if one person is getting better, is getting healthier, it affects everybody. You know, we all benefit from
Yes.
it. And that's why I thank me for my service.
Yes.
And it was very moving concept for me, but not foreign because of the society I grew up in. So I'm sitting on the mountain and the sun is going down and the fear is unreal. I am petrified to a point that I couldn't even tell why I'm so scared. I mean, because before, if I was afraid of the bear or the mountain lion or whatever, in that point the fear was so elusive, was so not connected to anything.
Sure.
That I was just, I counted the seconds, not the minutes, but the seconds. And I pulled from my toolbox every possible tool I had. Because I already on a spiritual path for a while on my first vision quest. And I had teacher and I had a lot of tools. But I'll tell you, Eliyahu, that was scary. I was never scared in my life like that.
Oh, wow.
And you know, and I went through the night. I survived. And finally I fell asleep towards the morning. And then the sun was rising and woke me up. And I'm lifting my head and opening my eyes. And in the top of the mountain, there is this wild animal, black, big animal. And it's starting to run towards me in the speed of light. And I'm just, I survived the night. And all of a sudden, this thing is coming towards me, and I don't know what it is. And when it's getting closer, I could see it was a dog, but huge. And
wild.
Yes. And I didn't see that dog before anywhere. And just when it came into the circle, it stopped on its track. And it didn't move in. And
that's incredible.
Yeah. So that was my vision quest. And then after the 24 hours passed, people came to bring me down, take me to the sweat lodge. Now that was an intense sweat lodges, and I'll tell you, I've done many sweat lodges in my life, and that is the one to remember, because even Thunder Warriors that was in the sweat lodge, it got intense for them, and at a certain point there are people among the warriors that ask for breaks, and I don't know, maybe they ask for breaks for us, but it was very intense, and it lasted, I don't know, a long time. I think maybe as much as 4 hours, 5 hours.
Whoa.
And that was even scarier that night. I couldn't believe it. But we came out, and then we had another breakfast, and each and one of us got to tell their story.
That was the first time you ate that breakfast?
I don't think so, but
okay, but you had gotten 24 hours.
Yes,
more or less.
And then
each one told
told their story about their experience on the hill. And when it was my turn, I talked about being a 4-year-old and that yearning that followed me my entire life, and how I cried in my mother kindergarten. And I said that was the first time that I felt that nature and I were one. And that's a gift that nobody ever can take away from me, because I experienced that wholeness. And since then, it follows me. I don't feel that separation.
Whoa.
And it also has to do with practice, because the native philosophy, it's all about walking in a sacred manner, and when you practice that type of living, that type of approaching life, there is that wholeness within that particular way of living. So,
what is that, walking in a sacred manner? What is it, and how do you do it?
How do you do it? Okay, so after that vision quest, I understood what it means, and let me just convey a story to you. Is one time when I was already living on a reservation, I saw those two big guys, and they were working on a buffalo hide. And Twylah said, go out there and tell them that, to come to ceremony, because we had ceremony like 3 times a week where people came from the outside. So I came out and I said, come to ceremony. And they looked at me and they says, we are in ceremony. So what happened is that everything is a ceremony. When you wake up in the morning, for me, even the first thing when I open my eyes, I don't even go out yet. I give thanks for another day, and I do my Thanksgiving, and I connect to the great mystery and the rest of the creation and so forth. But everybody does it. Something that is very beautiful about native philosophy is that Joseph Campbell said it very, very good in his series. He had a very famous series about spirituality. And it says that what's so wonderful about the native culture, that it's so alive and it always moves with time and space. So for example, if the people were hunters, their songs and all their language of symbols were around animals. But if they became farmers and start to cultivate things from the plants world, their ceremony change and everything changed. So it can never go stagnant. And one of the things that my parents loved about when they come and visited me on the res is that is the Thanksgiving and the fact that you can invent your own prayers. You don't need to read them from a book, but they come from within. So walking in a sacred manner, it means that you walk slow, you speak soft, you walk slow, and you pay attention to everything. So for example, if I come to your place today, I couldn't just enter, because the place you live, there are ancestors of the land, there are creatures of the land, there are things that habitat this very sacred space. I can't just march in. I have to make an offering, maybe next to the gate. I have to ask permission from the ancestor of the land if I can enter. That's walking in a sacred manner, meaning you don't just barge in. And another example that I give you is one time I was with a friend, and she's also practiced this, and we were going to go into a horse ranch, and And I said, wait, we need to do our prayers before we enter. And she said, well, just let's drive just a little bit, and we put the car there. And I said, but we can't enter. We have to do it before we enter the gate, because otherwise it's an invasion. But it has to do with how you pick the food, how you eat your food, with everything, every single moment. And I remember that when I was hanging out with the medicine people, and they said that the way you pick up the herbs is more sacredly you pick them up, more potent they'll be.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's walking in a sacred manner in a nutshell.
Whoa.
But I'll give you a very good example for urban people. Is, for example, sometimes I'm not very Indian, and I get impatient on traffic, and then I need to apologize to my car because it's a sacred gift that I was given.
It's also a conscious being.
Yeah, yes. And it's not to be used lightly, you know. So I can't use a sacred gift in unsacred way and honk my horn and try to cut people on the road, because that's not respectful to that being, which is my car, and not respectful to the gift.
Whoa. So when you came into our place, did you make an offering, and what kind of offering?
I usually bring tobacco, but for example, in this land, something very sacred is wheat. So yes. I might have wheat with me, or cornmeal, or sage, or tobacco. Usually I carry tobacco because that's what you pray with.
Wow. It's this whole idea of every place is a sacred place.
Yeah.
So the idea of sacred space, and everything is sacred. Everything.
Because the same hand created everything, and that's a sacred hand.
And what an amazing difference from the West, where nothing is sacred. For so many people who believe in nothing at all, nothing is sacred. It's an incredible worldview difference.
It's true, and I think that there are things that are sacred to every person. For example, their children or their grandparents or whatever. They might not call it like that, but I think that there is a big difference with the way we approach. The Western culture is very much into that belongs to me.
Yes.
Kind of a way, and the native people, it belongs to everybody.
Yes.
And because it's all a sister or a brother, and we need to approach it as such.
Beautiful. Okay.
I have to say one more thing about that. Is one of the questions that I was asked often is, they said, well, native people, they have now computers and cars and things like that. They're not in the working with the natural forces the way they used to. And I said, it's true, but it depends how you approach this thing, because for them it's a living thing. And I'll tell you, my computer is I give thanks to my computer every day, and I said, without you I would not be able to make a living. And my computer, they don't break down very much. Only when other people start to work on them, I'm in trouble.
Our machines know when we love them, and they know when we don't, because everything is consciousness. This is one of the things that native peoples understand, and modern people have forgotten. Everything is consciousness. Consciousness is all there is. Yes, beautiful. Okay. I want to ask you about your great teachers, because you have still and have had great teachers, famous teachers. The most famous, I suppose, is Grandma Twylah. who I met once, and that was an incredible meeting. That I suppose changed my life. So anyway, I mean, I do feel that. Tell me about twylah.
Twylah, I just told somebody yesterday, a friend called me that met her, and she said, you know, I've been feeling her around me lately. And she started to say something about twylah, and I said, yeah, twylah was always many light years ahead of her time. And she got a lot of negative comments flying at her because of that, because her people couldn't understand why she chose to teach white people.
And to open her house in such a big
way. Exactly. She got a lot of bad rap, and not only from the people on the reservation, but from other nations. And so she was very, very courageous. And when she was a little girl, her grandfather was a medicine person, Moses Shango, and he said she'll be blind and she'll get healed. She'll be deaf and she'll get healed. She'll be crippled and she'll get healed. And all of those things actually happened.
Wow.
And she had a mission. She had a mission in life, and she did it very courageously. I remember one time she wrote a book with Jamie Sams. Other council fires were here before ours. And it got published. Yeah.
What?
And it got published. So every once in a while, we went to a bookstore because Harper Row publisher wanted her to talk about the book, and she didn't want to do it very much. She sent Jamie. She said, that's why I did it with somebody else. So, but what happened is that we took her to the bookstore, and she said, why do people want to have my signature? What does it mean? She said, I could never understood those twisted thinking. And she said, it means nothing. And so she was basically wet noodling. That was her terminology, a wet noodle. She was wet noodling the people that came and wanted her signature.
Giving them a wet noodle.
Yeah, exactly. And I was sitting here, and my friend Jessie was sitting across the room, and we were rolling our eyes, you know, because she always just said exactly which is very not native. They're not very confrontational. They always go backdoor. That's part of native philosophy, because I can't tell you what to do. You have to listen, and then you decide for yourself. This is, I have a story about that, how is native philosophy taught. But twylah was very much courageous, and I learned a lot of social skills from her, but she was not easy with me. She was very harsh, actually, and that's another thing for native teachers. Everybody they do according to what the person needs and how they'll grow the most. And,
okay. Why did you need harsh? And what do you mean by harsh?
Shaming me in front of people, picking on me.
Ignoring you, yes?
Ignoring me. She ignored me for 1.5 years.
Why? Why?
Why? Because when I came to the reservation, I was a Jew from Israel, and we asked questions. My education system raised me to ask questions, million questions. Why is it written this way, not this way? And what did they mean when they said this and that? And that's the way I was raised. Even in Passover, my grandfather, that's the way we read it. Why is it written this way, not this way? And then I come to the res, and I had a lot of questions. And native philosophy, you come in with silence. You open your eyes, you open your ears, but you don't open your mouth. I didn't know that. Nobody prepared me. So that was one reason. And the other reason